Hi, I'm Brian, and this is the brand new CLA shooting brake from Mercedes. Let's take a closer look. What's changed with this model? Well, I can tell you that we are now 53 millimeters wider. So what is that for Imperial, guys? It's about that. But we are also 2 millimeters lower, and that is only about that much. But you can really see the impact that it's had on the design of this car. Now, I once heard a designer say, and you get extra bonus points if you can tell me which designer it was, because I did mention it in a clip, that if you like the design of a car, you should take away one design line and then see how it looks. And that is something that they have tried to emulate with the design of the shooting brake. As we come slightly higher up the design, I think we start to get a sense of exactly why this car is so popular with designers. You can see that so much care and attention has been put into the detail of how this car visually presents. Look at the way these headlights cut into the side, and they match so beautifully this line of the bonnet coming right up and right into the wing. Every detail here is really thought through, and just look at this detail here. Look at the way that that cuts straight into the wheel arch. It's so aggressive but so precise, and really does accentuate the way that the wheel works within the arch. The CLA is now 48 millimeters longer, and in conjunction with that decreased height ride of 2 millimeters, what you can see is that really does increase the sportiness of the feel. Now, it's not only that. Remember when I said if you like the character lines, maybe you should remove one? Well, that is what has happened at the shoulder height. Gone is this defining shoulder height line right throughout the body, and what you have is just a feeling of almost swell as we get through the car to the coupe line right at the rear, meeting up with this stylish accentuation of the rear light right at the back. So there is no more defining feature of a shooting brake than the side profile. This speaks to people. It either infuriates them or drives them wild with desire. So let me be honest, if you didn't like the shooting brake to begin with, I'm really keen to see if this has changed your mind. But more important, if you are a fan and a devotee of this style of car, I am really keen to know if you like the way that this has changed. For me, if I stand back from it and drink it all in one, I think the aesthetic has been significantly improved. Yes, you could argue it's a little bit more bulbous in its rear third. It doesn't quite have that classic drop-down draggy coupe line, but it looks a whole lot more distinct. Now, this for me is the real story of success of this car. Why? Well, practicality is a very important issue, and one of the reasons I've always disliked the shooting brake is the fact that the boot was almost laughable and unusable. Well, guess what? It's now been increased by 53 millimeters in load width. That's about that. Now, that might not seem like an awful lot of room, but trust me, when you're trying to get stuff in the back of here, it makes all the difference in the world. As you can see, we now can reasonably access this and get what we want in. And it's got a pretty decent size as well. You could comfortably fit suitcases back here, and more than enough for a nice weekend away. If we lift up the cover, we can see that we've even got a little bit of space and storage below as well. Nice spot for some tools or some extras that you might want to carry around. Okay, so in due course there are going to be an awful lot of choices between manuals, automatics, petrol, diesel, and who knows what else powering. But at the moment we have only the top engine to look at. That is a 4-cylinder CLA 250 2-litre petrol engine producing 225 horsepower, 350 newton meters of torque, front-wheel drive, 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox, and it will give you an efficiency, well, they claim, of 6.5 litres for every 100 kilometers driven. Now, I'm not quite sure about that. Well, from the moment that you open the door, these frameless windows really tell you that this is a shooting brake. And from the second that you take a glance in the interior, everything in there reinforces that idea. So there's nothing in here that should blow your mind or really set this apart from a lot of other cars, but it's the individual stylistic details that add up together to let you know exactly what car you're sitting in. And you can even see that the moment that you stare at the door. It's just the way that things are laid out, and it's the attention to detail. Just look at the way that this detail has been carried out with this aluminium effect right here. That is really very special. You won't find that screen integrated in quite that way in any other car. And even these air vents. Okay, it's my old worst enemy piano black, but this is a very particular layout and I like it. It's very unique just for this car. So when I think of a shooting brake, I think only, okay, I'm going to compare this car with other shooting brakes, not with other cars. Because in terms of practicality, let's be honest, there are better cars. In terms of sports performance, let's be honest, there are better cars. And in terms of pure emotional design, let's be honest, there are better cars. But in terms of originality and flair and being able to pull up outside somebody's house where they haven't seen 7,000 of that car before and where you're driving something that's just practical enough, just fast enough, just exciting enough, I think you'd have to think for a long time before you found something that could punch above this weight. In keeping with the styling of the car, a lot of details have been carried over from other lines that really reinforce the idea that styling is key. What do I mean by that? Well, there are 64 ambient lighting modes. Okay, that's not a new idea. An E-Class had that 2 years ago. But there are 10 color worlds and 3 color zones for this car. You know I'm not the world's biggest fan of this piano black, but I love these air vents. Look at those. They're such a nice design feature and they feel great to use. Down here we have a full range of features that we're more than familiar with. They're very easy to identify by touch without needing to look at them. And this is getting to be quite a familiar sight in terms of how Mercedes are integrating their center console into use. And 2 cup holders here, charge points here, USB-C, 12 volt and an inductive charging pad. So nothing there to blow your mind. And I'm happy to see that we haven't gone crazy on redesigning the Mercedes interface. Let's take a look in the back and find out if it's going to work for us. Well, aesthetically right from the start, I think you'd have to agree that is very nicely finished. Stylish, not overblown, nicely understated, and really in keeping with the rest of the car. But is it comfortable or practical? Well, I'm going to take a seat in there and find out. A lot of attention has been paid with the increased dimensions of this car into making the back of it a lot more usable, and it really shows. So, again, 5'10", 178 centimeters. And for the first time ever in a shooting brake, I have more than enough headroom. Have a look at this. I have a full 2 inches above my head. So let's sum up the CLA shooting brake. Well, for me, it's a huge triumph. But I say that as a very skeptical observer. Bear in mind, I was not a massive fan of the predecessor, but I really like to see how this car has evolved. Hasn't been around that long. 2015, bear in mind, was the first ever iteration of this car. Now, I am a bit concerned. If you're in love with that styling, maybe this is a little step too far for you. So I'm very keen to hear what you have to say about that. For me, it takes all of the elements of design, it enhances them slightly, it removes some of the things that were a little bit too defining for my taste, and it adds a huge amount of practical functionality to this car.